Welcome back, pilots, to episode 4. Today we're taking a look at some of the basic power systems everyone should know. We're going to talk about maxing the power recharge for your shields, weapons, and engines, electromagnetic pulse systems, talking about the distortion overclocking mechanics, and then finally the signature system. So let's start off talking about how power impacts your shielding. Now, if you take a look on the bottom here, we see that our shields have been turned off. We can do this with the default key binding O. If we press O again to restart our shielding, we'll notice that our power management on the top MFD is in the middle position, which means it is stable between weapons, engines, and shields. As this stability is here, we are choosing to allow for all three systems to have a balanced amount of power. This allows us to recharge our shields, our weapons, and keep our boost topped up without having to switch our power anywhere. But as we can see here, the time it takes to recharge my shields to 100% is around 30 seconds. So, if we have our key binding set and we switch our power to full shields, you're going to see that number start to change. As we turn our shield generator back on, we have to wait the 8 seconds necessary to begin the shield recharge. You can see that by the little blue line that's on top of the red ones. And as that blue line reaches the edges where the red is the same size, the shields start to recharge. As the shields start to recharge, you'll notice that the shields are coming back a lot faster. And the elapsed time under shield power is 22 seconds. Which is a whole 40% faster than when it was in balanced power. This 40% can be shifted around to your different systems. The idea is you want to be constantly recharging the systems that need it and taking power away from systems that don't. Let's say you want to switch to weapons. Take a look at the bottom MFD. You'll see that we've switched to 100% weapon power. And you'll already notice that my weapons went from 55 to 110. If we switch it back, you'll notice that that number drops immediately from 110 down to 55. I've now switched 100% of the available power I have back from engines back into weapons, and we immediately begin to see a weapon recharge. This can be used for your advantage. If we switch our weapons at the 55% mark down to another system, we have already dispersed the 55 rounds above us, and we can use that extra magazine. Let's see that again. I have my power and weapons, and as I reach the end of that magazine, I switch my power into engines. What's happening here is as the weapon system no longer needs the extra power to hold the magazine, I switch weapon power to engines, and that allows me to maintain my engine boost advantage. Now, while you're switching power to different weapon systems, you'll notice that when you switch power to one system or the other, a small little icon appears beside either the boost indicator, your weapons, or your shields. And this little indicator shows the time it takes to transfer power from one system to the other. Right now, it's doing it relatively quickly, but that little icon on the side to see where it says 80 will dissipate, and then the recharge will start to happen. Now our power is in boost. Let's check the recharge rates. From 80% to 100%, if I have 100% power in engines, my recharge time is 5 seconds at 100% boost power. If I throw my power in weapons and wait for my engines to recharge when I don't have power pushed into that system, my recharge time dramatically increases to 10 seconds, which is double that of the recharge time if I was in 100% engines. On top of that, if you have power in a system, that system inherently is stronger. For example, with shields, if you have power in shields, your shields are 30% or 40% tougher. There's physically more shield there to punch through. If you have power in engines, the rate of decay or the rate of boost being consumed is lower if you have 100% power into engines. So if you have a full magazine, and you no longer need to recharge your weapons, it's important to put your power in another system. For example, if you're setting up on a target, trying to find a line in, I typically keep my power in my engines because I need to use boost to get into the position I want to be in. And I don't switch power to my weapons during the fight because it's likely that I might be taking hits during that fight or need boost to maintain a position or look for a new one. It's important to understand that power management has a lot to do with just understanding what situation you're in and what part of your ship or what philosophy of attack you're going for. If you're in something like a hammerhead, it's probably best not to keep your power in engines because, let's be honest, you're not avoiding anything. But getting a 40% increase in, I guess you could say, durability through your shields is a massive difference between someone who puts their power in weapons on the hammerhead and someone who puts their power in shields. Each ship is going to be unique in that sense, and each ship is going to provide different opportunities and different situations to apply power to different areas. You, as the operator or the pilot, need to understand what you're in, what you need, and how to put it there. But keeping your power balanced across all three is going to get you killed. And for the person who is power managing properly, they will always have the advantage. Do not forget that increased power into engines increases turn rates in the current 323 model, which means they can get closer to you and apply damage, and you will not be able to respond. So you have to make a choice between maneuverability and mobility and durability and tankiness. The choice is yours, but you should at least know how to do it and how much of an effect proper power management has on everyday dogfights and combat in StarCitizen, including fighting against the NPCs. Let me give you an example of a power management choice in a dogfight. In this situation here, I am in full engines because at the moment I'm engaging a target. I see I want to kill this hornet. I'm coming in, but I've dropped most of my magazine. I see another target while I'm still recharging, and I'm debating if I want to continue engaging that hornet. The problem is nobody is shooting at me. I'm receiving no shield pressure whatsoever, and I find myself constantly weapon starved when I'm getting behind some of these hornets. I made the choice to switch to full weapons on that last target, and you'll see here I have a full magazine for engaging the next target. At certain points during every fight, you have to make a choice. In this case, because I wasn't receiving any meaningful pressure from anybody shooting at me, I had no need to keep my power in any other system. I needed guns. These kinds of choices are what you're going to have to figure out intuitively as you start to fly and engage. There is no one size fits all for every situation. But in layman's terms, if you need more guns and you're not getting hit, ask for more guns. Okay, let's take a look at EMPs and how to turn them on and how to use them. EMP stands for electromagnetic pulse. If you look down at your MFDs or multifunction displays, under the weapons tab you'll see two options. EMPs are typically turned off when you start a ship. It should be noted that in order for the successful deployment of the EMP system, you must split your weapon groups. Weapon groups can be adjusted under the weapons MFD by hitting the little top button saying menu and selecting the proper fire groups. If we go to power, we can also overclock the system. If I select my power MFD and go down to the Tormag burst generator, I can click on overclock, which gives me an extra 30% EMP distortion damage burst, as well as increased heat, which means I'm going to charge and heat up my EMP quicker, but I'm going to get a larger and more deadly burst. As you can see here, as I pull the trigger, I have two separate fire groups. My first trigger squeeze on my joystick is firing my main weapons. This is fire group 1. When I deploy or when I pull my trigger deeper to the second stage, I start to charge up my EMP. It should be noted that EMPs are not very useful unless they're fully charged. So try to maintain discipline and only deploy the system when you're at 100% like you see here. When the EMP is fully charged, you'll see a giant blue bubble surrounding the ship. This allows you to know one, that an EMP is charging, and 2, if it's fully charged. It should be noted that your EM signature gets significantly higher when an EMP is at full charge. So you may receive a lot of EM missile pressure because you're lighting up like a Christmas tree. As you deploy the system, you'll notice that your shields will start to get hit. Don't panic. If your shields are up, you'll be fine, but try to keep your shields up. You can immediately, after deployment of the system, recharge for a second burst. It should be noted that it typically takes a few bursts of EMP at close range to disable a ship, depending on the ship you're using. Distortion damage gets applied to every ship when its shields are down. Distortion damage, or EMP damage, coming from either EMP weapons, which are distortion guns like XJs, or EMPs themselves, will damage components in the distortion, not in the health of the component. Which means that when a ship has sustained enough distortion damage, the components start to turn off and the ship is disabled without any damage to the ship itself. If you'll notice that the Tormag burst generator is almost at overheat. The yellow line symbolizes the amount of heat that the system has endured, and at full charge, the heat builds up significantly faster, including the fact that it's been overclocked. Once it's reached its maximum heat, the system will turn off and you will not be able to deploy it. However, you can try to deploy it again, but you'll simply heat up before it has a chance to do so. All EMP ships and all EMP systems work the same. Every system has a fall off. The level of EMP power output from something like a Vanguard Sentinel compared to a Hawk may be different, but the mechanics are the same. These are not 100% accurate numbers, but they're in the ballpark. Depending on different patches and different tuning, some of these stats may change, but the philosophy is still the same. 0 to 200 gives you 100% of your EMP power, and as you start to increase in distance, the effect of distortion is reduced, and quite considerably. You want to shoot for around the 500 or closer mark, but basically closer is better. So every pilot should know the absolute basics of their signature system. As we see here, and we touched on briefly on the missile section, these are your three types of signatures: thermal, cross-section, and electromagnetic. You can turn on the signatures by going Options, Game Settings, and going to Emissions HUD, Display Signature Values. Have that set to yes, and you'll be able to see the exact numbers over top of your signatures. This matters because if you want to remain hidden, you need to understand that whatever highest of your three signatures is the distance at which people can see you. So, for example, if somebody is trying to look for me, then my highest signature is 8,654 meters. If I reduce my IR or reduce my EM, I'm still going to be discovered at 8,600 meters because the cross-section, the physical size of my ship, is allowing me to get picked up at 8,600 meters. So make sure you understand that whatever your highest signature is, that's the one that you need to reduce. Your signature that you cannot reduce is your cross-section. All you can do is face towards whoever is scanning you, and hopefully they pick up a smaller cross-section. Now, every one of you guys and girls needs to understand basic MFDs, or multi-function display. Going to the top left where it says menu and going over to power, you'll be able to access all of your systems, including your power plants, which you can overclock. Overclocking increases the amount of heat damage or heat a ship's system can produce, and if your ship is producing too much heat, components will eventually start, well, not working. Overclocking power plants is not recommended. I simply don't do it because the mechanics aren't fully fleshed out yet. However, in a pinch, if you really need to get that extra power to your ship, you can. Understand that if your ship is having power problems, this is a common thing, where if you power up your weapons and your shield systems, let's say you upgraded different components, and you no longer have the power to feed those systems, it won't happen immediately. What will happen is your systems will start shutting down, and after 30 seconds to a few minutes of flight time, your ship will just simply turn off and start floating in space. That's because there's been too much heat buildup in your cooling systems, and it's damaged your power plant, and your ship has been turned off. Understand that it's best practice to put the strongest power plant in whatever ship you're using to avoid any of these issues. JS300s are military class A devices, which are power plants that almost every one of my ships use because the military components have the highest power output and also the highest hit points in case you get missiles hitting you doing damage to your components. So, Here we can access all our systems, and we can increase, decrease powers if we need to. It's typically best for new pilots to keep the settings on standard. Don't increase the powers. Right now it doesn't do much, if anything. However, if you need to turn off certain components or turn on certain components, you can access it here and turn and power on and off through different systems. For example, if we turn off our Panthers, you'll notice that our 2 weapon systems have gone down. But in a pinch, if you'd like to turn your weapon systems back on, you can press the hotkey P, or the Papa key, to turn weapon systems back on and cycle them so that you don't have to go into your MFDs if you are engaged in a fight. You just simply need to power them off by pressing P and power them on to reignite your systems. Ballistic weapons do not need to be recharged. Obviously, they're ballistics. However, they still need to have power flowing to them. You cannot turn off your ballistic systems and still use them. Now, we're going to do a quick little example of signatures. Even though our signature system here tells us that 8,600 meters is where we're going, you may not be flying a Gladius. You may be flying something much larger, or something with a much higher EM signature. If you turn off your shields with the hotkey O, you'll notice that our EM signature immediately starts to drop. We went from around 6,000 to dropping 3,900, dropping still 3,960, and so on and so forth. If you want to power your shields back up, you press the O key, the systems power up, and again, we're waiting for our small little recharge here to reach the edges of the red lines, and now the recharge starts. We put our power into shields right here, and our shields start to recharge at a much faster rate. Every one of you folks needs to understand how to manipulate your systems and how to access your MFDs and how to turn on and turn off components. Your 3 hotkeys help a lot when it comes to this stuff, and you can always press the U key, or the uniform key, to turn off all power to your systems and let the ship restart. It's definitely a nice little workaround tool for those bugs that you occasionally find in StarCitizen, because StarCitizen rarely has bugs. But pressing U will also power up your systems, and then pressing I to turn on your engines, which you can see here. If these 2 icons are red, it means that they are powered down. Your hydrogen and quantum fuel is not being utilized. You press the I key and your engines are back on. I to turn off, I to turn on. Now, looks like we've covered some of the basics. We understand the basics of our signature system and how we can manipulate those things. We understand going to our menu systems and power to change our components. And if we like to, if we're using an EMP ship, it's actually best to overclock the EMPs because you just get so much more bang for your buck. But do not overclock your power plants. I do not recommend doing that. Another important point about shield systems and power in general is that as you're recharging the shield systems on any ship, if you're interrupted with a weapons fire at any point, your recharge rate or recharge is going to reset, like this example here. So here we go. I'm recharging my shields now. So go ahead and shoot just 1 shot. Yep, it's reset my shield recharge, and shoot 1 more time. There you go. Yeah, reset it again. 1 shot again. There we go. Okay, this concludes episode 4 of the Foundations course. You have now had the basic understanding and explanations of power plants, how it affects your shields, weapons, engines, how the basics of EMP systems work, and also the bare minimum, in my opinion, information you need to understand how the signature system works and how you can manipulate it. I hope you found this educational information helpful. I hope that this will give you an advantage and some excitement as you move into the next step of your training. And I'll join you for episode 5, which is combining all your basics and getting you out there with basic strategy, teamwork coordination, and weapon systems to make sure that you are ready and capable as you move into the next PvP chapter of your StarCitizen life. My name is Avenger 1, and I'll see you next time.